mortgage payments have decreased $372 since October 2023. That means that if you want to buy a house, this is your opportunity. If you let it pass, you can end up paying much more in the future. And to understand what contributed to this phenomenon and also great news, let's take a look at this Redfin article. And here's this article from Redfin, and where it talks about the housing market updates. So the title, Homebuyers' monthly payments dropped to lowest level in nearly a year, bringing back some house hunters. And so let's just go along. And what it says here is the median U.S. housing payment is down nearly $400 from its October peak, enticing some sideline buyers to get back in the game. The median U.S. mortgage payment was $2,361 during the first 4 weeks ending December 31st. That's down $372, which is a reduction of 14% from October's all-time high to its lowest level in nearly a year. The weekly average mortgage rate dipped to 6.61% at the end of December, down from a 23-year high of 7.79% in late October. Now, I want to pause here and talk about the difference in rate. If you just simply look at the numbers, you take 6.61% and you compare that to 7.79%, that might not seem much of a difference. It's only a 1% plus difference, right? But if you take this and you place it into the bigger picture, a 1% difference in your interest rates, that makes room for great savings when you compute that number over the life of the mortgage, which it's usually a 30-year mortgage. Those savings can change depending on the type of mortgage you sign up for, but that's something I wanted to highlight and keep in mind. Now, another point I want to highlight here is the saving of $372. Now, I want to take a moment and talk about that reduction of $372. So that reduction of $372 applies only to mortgages that close back in December, right? Because that's when the rates actually go down. So if you close on the purchase of home around that time frame, chances are you already took advantage of the lower rates. But if you happen to buy a property beforehand, that doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It doesn't mean that you're locked into a ridiculous rate forever. There are other things that you can do to actually lower those payments. And that's done through a refinance. Now, there are two ways to refinance your property. So let's suppose you have this property here, right? So I said there are two ways to refinance a property. So let's say you purchase a property at $360,000 and you paid it over time and yada yada, and now you are left with a debt of $320,000, right? So that's how much you owned in the house. So one way to do a refinance into a lower rate is to simply refinance this exact amount, the amount that you own in your house, at the lower rate. So this will essentially provide you a lower mortgage payment, locking in those savings that you're seeking to get. That's one way. The second way is done this way. So let's say you have the same house, but then over the years, you have built up equity in it, either through paying down the house, or maybe the market conditions have increased the value of your home. And let's say that the new value of your property is now $460,000. So that means that when you take that $460,000 and then you minus it to the original value of the house, that means that your property has increased, let's say, approximately $100,000. And remember, this is just for illustration purposes. There's no way to determine exactly how much your property is going to increase, because it all depends on how much or how aggressively you're paying down your mortgage, and also based on market conditions, right? So let's say that you have built up an equity of $100,000. So you can do something called a cash out refi. And so what does that mean? So a cash out refi is in essence a refinance, is a mortgage, and where you are allowed to cash out the equity that you have managed to build up over the years. So let's say you go to a bank and you say, hey, I would like to do a cash out refi on my property. This is how much I bought it for. And they'll going to do their assessments, and they're going to evaluate the property, and they're going to send out inspectors, and the bank is going to do its thing, and then they come back and they agree with you. Then they say, yes, your property actually went up in value, and this is how much you have in equity. However, we're going to give you a cash out refi with these terms, right? So you can see something like 80 LTV or 75 LTV. And LTV simply means loaned to value. And what does that mean? That means that the bank will give you this much based on your equity. So if you see an 80 LTV, that means they're going to give you 80% of that 100,000. And that is the equivalent of $80,000. And if you see a 75 LTV, that means they're going to give you 75% on that equity. Now, and this is just a simple math that I'm doing just to give you an idea how that works. The computing of how much the bank is going to give you according to the LTV, it's based on a lot of variables that we're not going to get into today because otherwise it will be a very lengthy episode. But that in essence should give you a general picture of how a cash out refi works. And this is my favorite strategy, so to speak, that I've implemented year over year with the existing properties that I have. I buy them, I pay down the mortgage, I let it sit in the market. And once I build up enough equity, I go to a lender and I just pull the equity out and I use that cash and I buy more properties and so on, all the way until the size of my portfolio today. Okay, now back to the article. Now, back into the article, we talked about the rate of 6.61% and then 70.79. So moving along, early stage home buying demand is starting to pick up as buyers take advantage of lower rates and more homes to choose from. New listings are up 10% year over year. Redfin's Homebuyer Demand Index, a seasonal adjusted measure of requests for tours and other home buying services from Redfin agents, is up 10% from a month ago to its highest level since August. Pending sales are down just 3% annually, the smallest decline in 2 years. And here is a quote from one of Redfin's premier agents. There have been more tours and more offers on my listing since mortgage rates started declining. It's all about perspective. 2 years ago, buyers would have cried about a 6% mortgage rate. Now they're happy they have dropped down to the mid 6%. This comment about perspective, it's very important. Because I've seen so many people react to just one single piece of news without really understanding the overall picture. This is why I emphasize that it is very important to invest in your education, whether it's through books or watching content like ours, so that you can get a general picture and not react to just one trendy piece of news. You want to take in the piece of news, evaluate it, assess it, and then put it into context and see how that piece of news plays into the overall picture. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. I know that up to this point, I've talked a lot about multiple numbers and it might sound a little bit confusing. If so, I get you. That's why we're going to continue down this article and we're going to take a look at a couple of tables and a couple of graphs to help you get a much better depiction of what's going on. So let's move on and let's look at this one table right here. So I want to make a focus on median sale price and also median asking price. So the median sale price, meaning the average of the home prices that were sold, is sitting at $363,371. Okay. Now keep in mind that depending on where you're tuning in or depending on where you're investing, the price of those home sales might be higher than what you're seeing on the screen or lower than that, okay? This is just an average of all the home prices across the nation. And then I wanna make an emphasis on the median asking price, which is sitting currently at $359,236. So as you can see, the sales price continues to be higher than the asking price. Why is that? Is it because there's not enough inventory, or is it because we continue to get bidding wars? We don't know. And that's why it's important to investigate, navigate, rather than just reacting at one piece of news and say, oh my God, like the sales price is actually higher than the asking price, right? As we continue through the article, we're going to get a much better picture of what's going on. I want to take a pause here and address what an asking price means. Depending on where you're at, chances are you already know what an asking price is. But remember, we have people of all kinds of financial literacy tuning into our channel. And I want to make sure I take a moment to address those who are actually brand new into this and might not necessarily understand what an asking price means. An asking price simply means a price that you see on a house when it's up for sale. So let's say if you go into a page like Zillow and you started looking into properties, you might see 199,900, 30,000, 535,000, 449,900. All of these are asking prices, meaning this is the price that the seller is asking for. And depending on you and the market, the buyer could choose to either pay exactly what the asking price is or choose to pay less or more. So when a bidding war happens, people tend to bid more than the asking price because, let's face it, if you bid more, that means the seller will pick you because you're offering them more money. So that's in essence what it means, and that's what an asking price is. Now, back to the article and let's move along. And I want to take a look at some stats, right? So here we have the median sale price. And the way this table is broken down into is that on this side, on the left, it talks about the biggest increases year over year. And then on the right side, it talks about the areas where they have seen the bigger decreases. And so in terms of increases in median home sale price, there's Newark, Anaheim, California, West Palm Beach, Florida, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami. Those are the areas where they have seen the biggest median sale price increase. Now, in the areas where they've seen the decreases, we have Fort Worth and Texas, Austin, Texas, San Francisco, and Denver. Moving along regarding pending sales, the pending sales have actually increased in areas like Dallas, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Ohio, San Jose, California, and Chicago. And then in the areas where the pending sales have actually decreased, there's Providence, Rhode Island, New Brunswick, and New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey, New York, and Atlanta. And then in areas where they're seeing an increasing listing, meaning new houses going into the market, we have Phoenix, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, Austin, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, and Dallas. Is this something that is actually happening? Is this what you're experiencing in your area? Let me know down in the comment section. Now, moving on to the areas where new listings have actually decreased. That's in San Francisco, Atlanta, Providence, Rhode Island, Indianapolis, and Warren, Michigan. Now, we're moving on to the favorite part of the article, at least favorite for me, and where we're going to analyze the graphs, because that's where you get the best picture, so to speak, out of the entire context. So we see here that the median sale price has been increasing 4.4% year over year. So, and in here, we're going to see a point of comparison and where we're going to take a look at the graph for 2023, 2022, 21, and 20. So if we compare these numbers year over year, you can see that, in fact, there was an increase in sale prices in comparison to 2022, 2021, and 2020. But if we were to compare the number right here to earlier in the year, you can see that the sales prices have actually decreased from back in the summer. This is the highest peak that you see here, and it has actually decreased compared to the peak from back in 2022. So again, it's all about context, and that's why you need to get the overall picture to get a better understanding as to what's going on in the market rather than reacting to just one isolated piece of news. Now, does it tell us exactly what's contributing to the increase in sales price in comparison to last year? I don't know. It could be because we're facing bidding wars. It could be because there's not enough inventory in the market. It could also be because the rates have actually gone down from 7 point something to 6 point something. I don't know. That's why we need to keep digging into this and continue to look for more information. But if you happen to know in your area what's going on, feel free to let me know down in the comment section and help everyone in this beautiful community to keep educating themselves. So let's just keep going down and go over to this one. I really want to take a look at this one because it ties back everything beautifully to the introduction of this video. So this graph talks about the homebuyer housing payments, right? So remember how at the beginning I talked about that mortgage payments are down an average of $372. So now you get a much better picture. So yes, when you compare the mortgage payment in December to October, you can see here in this graph that there has been a decline. Once again, we're talking about context. So there's been a decrease of $372 from December to October, which means it's good news for those who are actually closing on their home purchase in December. But if you were to compare this to the other years prior, you can see that the mortgage payments continue to be the highest in comparison to the prior year, mainly because of the increase in property prices and also because of the increase in interest rates. But as you can see here, interest rates started declining for the past quarter in 2023. And you can see how this number keeps going down, at least for now, until it has hit a savings of $372, which is the equivalent of an average of a mortgage payment of $2,361. Now, let's keep scrolling, and I want to talk about inventory, the amount of homes available in the market, because this plays a big role in terms of, the availability of housing in the market and the fact that people get to engage in bidding wars if there's not enough housing in the market. So according to this graph, we see here that the average supply in the market is of 3.8 months. Okay, that's on the low side. For a market to be considered healthy, we need to see an average of 6 months. 6 months of available housing supply in the market. So just by looking at this graph, you're getting a much better picture. Okay, now I know that what's considered healthy is 6 months of housing supply. We see here that what's available is actually 3.8 months, which sort of explains why there's still not enough inventory. That's still better than nothing, but it's still, one way or the other, it creates a scenario for buyers to want to compete with one another. So when you add low supply and a reduction of the interest rate, it just creates a combination in where people just want to, grab whatever they can, right? As long as they can afford it. So this provides you, once again, more transparency, more of a storyline into the picture. And if you start comparing these graphs, so the orange line is for 2023, and you can see that at the beginning of the year, there was an increase in supply available in the market. And then overall, it went down into the summer months. And then it went up a little bit, but then it sort of took a kind of like a smaller dip sometime later in the year, which this could be attributed to the fact that the rates went down. So then more people are trying to snatch up more properties in the market. Now, moving along, and I want to take a look at the homes sold, because this is actually very interesting. And what it says here is that the average time frame for a house to sell, it's 41 days, which in my opinion is considered healthy. A property hitting the market and closing somewhere between 30 days to 45 days is considered healthy for me. So in this stage, we see that on average, they are taking the right amount of time to close. In fact, it actually improved in here in comparison to early in the year in 2023, which was taken an average of almost 2 months. It was taking 50 plus days to close, and now it's just went down to 41 days. Now I want to move on to the next one, and this is the graph about the final asking price or the sales price. So it's showing here that only 24% of homes sold above the final list price. So once again, if you look at things without a context and you see, wow, like the sales price is actually higher than the asking price, once again, look again, because now this is indicating that less than a quarter of the homes, that means 24.2% in this graph, of the properties are actually closing above the final asking price, which means that there's a difference of 75.8%. There is 75.8% of homes who did not necessarily close above the asking price. They could have closed at the asking price, or they could have closed below the asking price. How did I arrive to that 75.8? Well, just simple. You just take 100% and then you minus 24.2. That's how you end up with 75.8%. Now, if you were to compare 2023 to 2022, you can see that things have cooled off a little bit in terms of how many homes were actually purchased above the asking price. So in 2023, we see a peak here in the summer and then it went down. But if you take the full year of 2023, this is much better than what you're seeing here in 2021 and 2022. This means that when you look at these two graphs, more than 50% of the houses were actually bought above the asking price. And so that's a very big, large number compared to the 24.2 that we're seeing right now. So once again, it's all about the context, is all about understanding the bigger picture so that it can help you get a better understanding of what's going on in the market. And from what I can see, things are gradually adjusting again. Now, moving on to the next graph, here is another interesting point. Out of all the houses that were sold and hit the market, 3.9% of those listings, they have price drops. So once again, it's all about the context. Not all of them were sold at the asking price. 3.9% of them actually had a price drop. Now, I want to take a moment and actually invite you to join our newsletter. This newsletter was actually created out of frustration because every time I wanted to learn more about what was happening in the real estate market or learn more about finance related content, it was kind of challenging to scramble through multiple sites to try to find the piece of news that I really wanted to look into. Like every time I took a look at a newspaper or I tried to search for a piece of news, there was always so much noise, so many other pieces of information that I didn't necessarily find myself interested in reading. So out of frustration, the NOVARISE team and I decided to create this newsletter altogether. It's done with a lot of love. We have compiled all the important news that we believe our audience need to know in terms of finance and real estate related topics. So you'll find anything from hot news, from quizzes to, help you continue to increase your knowledge, what's going on in the real estate market, any current mortgage rates, some of the news that you need to pay attention to. In fact, the article that we analyzed today from Redfin was in fact featured in this month's newsletter. And as you scroll down, you will learn more about the U.S. economy, inflation, unemployment, anything from the global outlook, if that's something that interests you, anything related to the stock market, and book recommendations that you need to be reading and stuff like that, and videos that we find important to complement your reading and your education. So access to this newsletter is completely free. All you need to do is to go down to the description box down below or down in the comment section and sign up for the newsletter, and it will be delivered to your inbox once a month completely free.